We've taken another step towards a cashless society. A big bank has confirmed customers in some locations can no longer withdraw money over the counter as branches continue to wind back services.
Customers at Australia's biggest bank couldn't access their money for hours today, thanks to a major technical outage.
Dozens of concerned citizens gather for a crisis meeting in the West Australian wheatbelt town of Wongan Hills. Emotions are running high as the community faces the closure of its only bank.
More than $1 billion worth of physical cash has disappeared from the Australian economy in the past year. With phones and cards now the payment method of choice, Chris Kohler tells us it probably means we're spending more than we realise.
Worried customers came down to these Sydney branches in search of help.
I was told I have to come back tomorrow.
I'm just trying to go to the branch now, but it seems to be like only one teller is working.
Right. Here is what the big four banks would prefer you never sat down and added up. One Australian family went out for brunch. The bill came to $675. What they actually paid was $776, because $101 was added on top purely for the privilege of paying with a card. That is what the alternative to cash costs you. And over the past 9 years, the banks have been quietly removing the alternative.
It's up there with the pub with no beer, the bank with no cash. ANZ has confirmed some branches no longer handle cash at the counter. Others are directing customers to smart ATMs for cash transactions. ANZ says only 8% of its customers rely solely on branches.
8%. That is the number a bank uses when it wants a decision to sound small. 8% of ANZ's customers, the bank said, rely only on a branch. NAB put its own figure at 3%. Hold those numbers because they are the entire argument. The banks are not saying nobody needs the counter. They are saying not enough people do.
Show some spine, look at the decision and look at the people that you are hurting, because we are people. We are not just a number.
Westpac is being urged to rethink a decision to include this branch in dozens of regional bank closures.
I was upset and annoyed because it's our only bank that we have up here.
So let's stop dealing in percentages and deal in the count. At the end of the 2016 to 17 financial year, Australia had 13,814 bank-owned ATMs. Today, it has 5,143. 8,671 machines. Gone. Branches over the same stretch, from roughly 5,700 down to 3,205. 333 ATMs disappeared in the last year alone. That is not a market adjusting. That is a decision taken 4 times over in 4 boardrooms.
Well, we're not only sort of seeing cash being sort of, I guess, removed from the economy, but we're seeing obviously a deliberate play to transition everybody over to digital transactions.
A deliberate play. That is the phrase from the organisation that represents older Australians, and it is worth being precise about what it means. It does not mean a conspiracy. It means a business decision on a spreadsheet. Every branch costs rent, staff and security. Every armoured van, every note counted by hand costs money. Take the cash out and the cost comes out with it. Here is where it stops being an argument about convenience. When Bruce Rock in the West Australian wheatbelt lost its bank, residents began driving 50 kilometres to Merredin. Wongan Hills faced a 2-hour round trip. Queenstown in Tasmania lost its last branch and the round trip became 4 hours. 4 hours to speak to a human being about your own money. And every one of those drives is defended with the same promise. You do not need the counter because you have the app. Here is what happens when the app does not work.
Customers at Australia's biggest bank couldn't access their money for hours today thanks to a major technical outage. Millions unable to buy food or get paid. The bank says it knows the cause and is restoring services.
Millions of people unable to buy food, unable to get paid. Cards declined at supermarkets and cafes. Account balances showing $0. One customer reporting that his employer could not pay any staff at all. 7.7 million Australians use that one bank's app. And this is not a single bad morning. In September, a planned overnight upgrade at the same bank ran long, and a Sydney mother was standing at an Aldi checkout the next morning with a declined card and a full trolley. In January, both the Commonwealth Bank and ANZ went down on the same day.
The ABC has spoken to furious CommBank customers who were left unable to pay medical bills and buy essentials like medication or fuel. One woman said she was livid after an online customer services officer suggested she borrow money from friends or family to avoid going without paying medication.
Borrow money from your friends to get your medication. That was the bank's suggestion to its own customer about her own money. And here is the part that should stop you cold, because it is not about a bank at all. On the 27th of January this year, the Reserve Bank of Australia, the institution that runs the settlement system underneath every one of those apps, had a system failure of its own. Around 500 property settlements did not complete. 500 families, mid-move, money frozen in transit. The backup for a digital failure is cash, and the banks are removing it. At which point you might reasonably ask what the government has done about all this. From the 1st of January this year, a cash mandate came into force. Supermarkets and petrol stations must give you a reasonable opportunity to pay with cash. That is the sentence that ran in the news. Here are the conditions attached to it.
So at the moment, businesses that turn over more than $10 million and are in the grocery or fuel sector are currently mandated to accept cash payments. Those payments are where they're lower than $500 in value total.
4 conditions. Groceries and fuel only. Businesses turning over more than $10 million only. Transactions under $500 only. Between 7 in the morning and 9 at night only. So your chemist is not covered. Your GP is not covered. Your pub, your cafe, your hardware store, your mechanic, none of them are covered. Any business under the $10 million threshold can refuse your money tomorrow, and the majority of Australian businesses sit under that threshold. Around 1.5 million Australians use cash for more than 80% of what they buy in person. The law protects their groceries and their petrol. Everything else in their life, they are on their own.
Cash advocates are now calling on the government to make it illegal for businesses not to offer cash as a payment option. A petition currently before Parliament receiving close to 12,000 signatures in support of the right to use cash being protected by law.
This is not a consumer-led thing.
Not consumer-led. And you can prove that with the receipts. Because if this were really about what customers wanted, customers would not be paying a toll to comply. Australians hand over roughly $1.2 billion a year in card surcharges. Not for a product, for the act of paying. And it is spreading. In 2024 to 25, 16% of merchants added a surcharge, double the share of 3 years earlier. And the fee you are charged is often not the fee the business was charged. The same submission that documented that $101 brunch documented an airline ticket where processing the payment cost $4.53 and the customer was billed $14.60, more than triple. Which is why the simplest defence against a surcharge is the one quietly being taken off the shelf, which is why the simplest defence against a surcharge is the one quietly being taken off the shelf.
The latest figures on ATMs shows the number of machines has more than halved from almost 14,000 back in 2017 to around 6,000 in the middle of last year.
I would point out to people that cash is still very important, both as a means of payment.
Halved, and that was the count a year ago. On the regulator's own figures, it has fallen further since. The cheapest way to pay is the one you are losing the ability to use. The Reserve Bank has now moved. From the 1st of October this year, surcharges on Visa, MasterCard and EFTPOS are banned outright. The regulator estimates the package could save consumers and businesses up to $1.8 billion a year, which sounds like a win, until you read what the Reserve Bank itself concedes. Businesses that have been surcharging may simply raise their advertised prices instead. The fee does not vanish. It moves into the price of the coffee, where you cannot see it.
In the last year, more than $1.1 billion in cash has disappeared from the economy. It comes after a boom topped up Australia's cash stash to $100 billion. But now that looks like a peak, as notes and coins are swapped for cards and phones.
So who benefits from a country that cannot pay with notes? In the most recent half-year reporting round, Australia's 4 major banks posted $11.3 billion in combined profits. ANZ's first half profit jumped 14%, and the bank was explicit about how. Operating expenses down 9%. Cost-cutting is the engine. A branch with a teller counting notes is a cost. And with the 4 of them holding roughly 70% of the market, there is no fifth option waiting down the street for you. That was the point of closing the street.
UNSW Professor of Economics Richard Holden says in 5 years we'll be functionally cashless unless the Reserve Bank acts even sooner.
We could say year 1 we'll get rid of the $50 bill, year 2 we'll get rid of the 20 and the 10, and year 3 we'll kind of mop up the small change.
And here is the number that should have ended this whole project years ago. In 2019, cash was 32% of in-person payments. By 2022, it had halved to 16%. The fall the banks built their closure programs around. And by 2025, 3 years later, it was 15%. 32%, then 16%, then 15%. The collapse the banks planned for happened once, and then it stopped. The people still using cash are not stragglers who have not caught up. They are the flaw. And then the finding that matters most. 1 in 3 Australians say they would face hardship or major inconvenience if cash became hard to get, or if shops stopped taking it. Not 8%. Not 3%, 1 in 3. And the Reserve Bank's own conclusion on access was that getting hold of cash has become less convenient than it was 3 years ago.
The Financial Sector Union says the Big Four banks have shut 180 regional branches since January last year.
A federal government task force into regional banking delivered its final report at the end of September. It recommends banks do more to support communities experiencing branch closures, including by conducting impact assessments.
180 regional branches in a single year. And every one of those closures was justified with a number. 30 kilometres from Molong sits Blaney, which lost both of its banks inside the same year. Listen to what that branch was actually being used for.
How often would you use the bank branch here?
Probably at least 3 times a week, and that includes paying bills.
National Australia Bank has already closed. The Commonwealth Bank will shut in June.
3 times a week. That is not a nostalgic attachment to a building. That is a person running their life through a counter, and then being told the counter is closing and the alternative is an app. And every one of those closures was justified with a number. Take Molong in central western New South Wales. When the Commonwealth Bank moved to shut the last branch in town, it told the ABC there had been a 45% drop in transactions over 5 years. On paper, unarguable. The local mayor went through those same 5 years and pointed out what was in them. 3 years of drought in which farmers do not spend money and do not come into town. Then the bushfire smoke that cost the district's wineries their crops. Then the pandemic. That is the method. Measure a community during the worst 5 years it has had in living memory. Book the result as a permanent change in customer behaviour and close the branch. So where does this end up? 3 versions. The best case. The surcharge ban lands in October, prices barely move, and the mandate's built-in 3-year review widens it to cover chemists and medical services. The regional moratorium holds, and the country keeps a working fallback. The realistic case. Mandate stays exactly as narrow as it is. City branches keep closing. They made up 81% of last year's closures, so the pain moves from the bush to the suburbs. Nothing is ever announced as the end of cash. It simply becomes, one closure at a time, something you can no longer practically use. The worst case. The regional moratorium expires in mid-2027, and the closures resume at the old pace. And then, on some ordinary Tuesday, a system goes down the way the Reserve Bank's own system went down in January. And there is no cash in the town to fall back on.
Millions of Australians trust and rely on cash every day.
And it comes without the data breaches, scams and tech failures of digital payments.
Because it's not reliable. As soon as there's a flood, as soon as there's a fire, as soon as there's an internet outage, nobody can spend.
Now, the question underneath all of it. If 1 in 3 Australians would struggle without cash, and cash use has stopped falling, why did the banks keep closing the counters anyway? The answer is not that customers left. The answer is that customers were moved. And the Reserve Bank's own reporting on its 2025 survey said the quiet part plainly. The long decline in cash payments appears to be ending. The Finance Sector Union told the ABC's business programme exactly how it was done inside the branches. Not with an announcement, with performance targets. Listen to how the union put it.
It actually has had targets imposed on them in reducing the number of over-the-counter transactions and migrating or transferring their customers to digital platforms. So if they didn't do that, then their job was on the line.
Targets imposed on the staff to reduce the number of over-the-counter transactions and move customers onto apps. And if a teller did not hit the number, their job was on the line. Read that back against the bank's public case. 8% of ANZ's customers rely only on a branch. 3% of NAB's. Those figures were presented to you as a discovery, as something the banks observed happening and reluctantly responded to. They were a target. The decline was the product, not the reason. Every step of this follows from that one decision. The counter closed because the transactions were driven off it. The ATMs came out because the branches went. The surcharge exists because you no longer have the option that carries no fee. And the law that was supposed to protect you covers your groceries and your petrol and nothing else you spend money on. And it worked. The accounting firm that publishes the majors' half-year results each reporting season records the same pattern across all four. Revenue flat, profit up, costs down. This was not the market moving on. This was four companies holding roughly 70% of the market, cutting a cost and moving the consequences onto you. So, the short version. 8,671 bank ATMs have gone since 2017. The branch network has fallen from around 5,700 to 3,205. Two banks have confirmed customers at some branches can no longer take cash out over the counter. 1 in 3 Australians say losing access to cash would cause them hardship. And cash use, the thing that was supposed to be dying, has stopped falling. Here is what to actually do about it. Find out what you still have before you need it. Check which branch nearest you is still open, which ATMs your bank still owns, and whether your local post office runs Bank at Post. Do it on a quiet afternoon, not on the morning you need $300 and the app is down. Keep a physical cash reserve at home. Not a fortune, enough to cover a few days of food, fuel, and medication. Every outage in this video ended within a day, and the people who were fine were the ones with notes in a drawer. Do not bank your whole life in one place. A second account at a second institution costs nothing to open, and means one bank's bad morning is not your bad morning. Use cash where it still counts. A business only keeps a till if people use it. When a shop asks card or cash, your answer is a vote. And after the 1st of October, on Visa, MasterCard and EFTPOS, a surcharge should not be there at all. Put your objection somewhere it gets counted. Branch closures are assessed against community impact, and those assessments respond to submissions. If your branch is on a closure list, write to the bank and copy your federal member. Numbers are the only language this argument is conducted in. None of that stops a bank closing a branch. All of it stops you being the one caught out when it does. So tell me this. When did your bank last make you drive somewhere, or queue somewhere, or go without, just to get at your own money? And which bank was it? Put it in the comments.